Town and Country has an article that explains how and why Steve Bannon was arrested by the post office. Now, it's a curious thing that the timing of how we do stuff. Now, it's how things used to be knitted together in sort of a pre-industrial America, and how they create, the legal underpinnings of a society back when the mail was carried in physical bags, and guards had to go with them to make sure it got carried, because it was a federal offense to not let the mail get delivered, and anybody who interferes with the delivery of the mail is committing a federal crime. Anyways, so just talking to you, Joy. That's right. 5 years minimum for every count. So that's a billion. It's a billion Christmas cards you're interfering with. Not to mention ballots. We'll get there later. All right, so when Steve Bannon was arrested with two other guys for defrauding Trumpsters, quite frankly, and that's the odd part about this, I think, for most people, is that what he's being arrested for is defrauding and stealing from Trump supporters. Trumpsters, maggots, whatever nickname they got lots of names. Moron 19, whatever you want to call them. Trump flu. These people, these guys, Steve Bannon and the guy whose boat he was on, who had purchased that boat with money he had defrauded from and stolen from these people who gave it. Now, well, don't let me get off track. Hold on. Let's keep this. So on Thursday, Steve Bannon and two other guys are arrested and charged with defrauding Trumpsters who had contributed to this thing called Build the Wall, which is a private an NGO that was going to help build the wall because Congress was not going to fund it, and the American people wanted it. So what they were going to do was buy land and bricks and go down there and make the damn wall themselves. Imagine if they'd done something like this for, I don't know, healthcare. So they raised $25 million to help build the Mexican border wall, which apparently I guess they were going to buy strips of land along the border, which they would owe taxes on forever. And so, I mean, it's so complicated as to point out that it is obviously a scam in the very beginning. So according to the indictment, which was put out by Audrey Strauss, who was is in the SDNY, the men claimed that 100% of the proceeds, 100%, would go towards the construction of the border wall. But instead, siphoned off hundreds of thousands of dollars to secretly pay for expenses and salaries and buy themselves boats and all kinds of stuff. So that 100% is the sticking point. So if you're going to set up a fraudulent charity in the future, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, just leave off the 100% part, and you'll save yourself a whole lot of hassle. So 100% of the proceeds would go towards construction, but instead used them for that. If found guilty, Bannon will join a venerable cohort of criminals who were nabbed by a federal law enforcement agency most people don't know exists. The U.S. Postal Office Inspection Service, the USPIS, is a two-member enforcement division made up of white-collar crime experts, research scientists, explosives, chemical, and biological weapons experts, as well as armed officers who protect post offices and postal employees and arrest people who violate postal laws. And there are a lot of postal laws, including mail fraud. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you want a short course on it, just go watch The Firm. It's on Netflix right now, and all you have to do is watch the last half hour, but it's a really good movie, and poor Gene Hackman. But watch The Firm, and you'll hear the famous line, "It's not sexy, but it's got teeth." And that's how they bust the firm, was they were overbilling people, lying about their hours. Oh, spoiler alert. And that's racketeering. If the uppers knowingly knew that the partners were overbilling, there's so many laws in this that are, by the way, genuinely needed. These are laws that without them, the entire infrastructure of business in the United States would be financially so untrustworthy as to make every investor, both inside and outside the country, avoid it like the plague. This is one of the reasons why people don't shuffle their money around in a bunch of other countries when they have it, as far as investment goes, because the companies themselves are nonsense. It's one of the reasons why a lot of Chinese companies are not traded on the U.S. stock exchange, because they don't have those kind of internal laws about this kind of stuff. So the USPIS is who arrested Steve Bannon. And it's like all of our other big, law enforcement groups were kind of hatched out of the USPIS. There were so many crimes that were so deeply specific that they couldn't be responsible for all of it. So they branched off. So during the Civil War, Lincoln appointed this guy, Alan Pinkerton, of detective agency fame, to lead the Union Intelligence Service, which went on to become the U.S. Secret Service. That was an offshoot of the Postal Service. In 1919, a postal inspector named Elmer Eyre, God, I love these old names. When can we bring back those names? Alan Pinkerton and Elmer Eyre. You can't even say those names without having to put on a pinstripe suit. Was appointed head of the Internal Revenue Service's new intelligence unit. Eyre and 5 other former inspectors led the department in charging and prosecuting Al Capone on tax charges. Most notably, there was a period where gold bars were sent through the mail. That's how you transported them, because it was the only federally protected transport agency. And, nobody's going to FedEx a gold brick, because they only insure up to $2,000. You know what I'm saying? So if you're transporting stuff, technically it was the arm of the Postal Service that brought that stuff around. So the huge, like I said, the underpinnings of the entire financial structure of the United States was rested on whether or not the mail got where it was going. And so to have somebody like DeJoy in charge of it right now, undermining that infrastructure, is not simply an accident or the post offices fell out of favor as a useful organization. It is an attack on the protections against criminal activity that everyone, small to big business, has in this country for the normal infrastructure of their financial dealings in the country. If you can attack the Postal Service and all the ancillary organizations that have spread from it and the protections therein, you can basically destroy American business from the inside, which is what Russia was doing with Ukraine by putting sock puppets in charge of Burisma and the prosecutor's office, so that the company would defraud all of its investors. The prosecutor would only seek criminal cases against people who are trying to stop it. And no one puts money into Ukraine, everybody becomes impoverished, and it makes a takeover easier. This is a long game, 20, 30 years in the process, and this is an active problem right now.